We got Gators breakdown here. We know we're business.
Gators breakdown, because there's never a dull moment in Gator Nation.
The Gators Breakdown podcast is ready to go. I'm your host, David Waters. You can find me on social media at GatorDave_SEC. Coming at you not long after the reports out there hitting that Deron Wilson will be hired as cornerbacks coach for the Gators to replace Will Harris, who, of course, left late last week to go to the rival Miami Hurricanes. So we'll get into it right here. It won't be too long of an episode, a holiday weekend here. Get back to some time with the family, but won't let this one go by too much. You know, not a lot to dive into here with Deron Wilson, of course, was part of this Florida staff in Billy Napier's first season as Gators head coach. So there's the connection, and perhaps why this one moved a little fast there, since there was some recent history. So certainly some to get into right here on this episode of Gators Breakdown. So I hope if you got a 3-day weekend, I hope you're enjoying it there. So President's Day weekend, of course. And hey, with that, there's I'm going to help you guys out. Help myself out. If you follow me on Twitter as well, you get these. But Fanatics, partnership with those guys, and huge sale going on there. I don't know if you guys can see the here. Let's see if I can blow that up there. But they got a big sale going on at Fanatics, up to 40% off. Not everything 40% off, but pretty big sale going on. And that new polo with the old Pell logo, about $48 there with the code Patriot. Look at there, $20 for Jordan t-shirts. Baseball season coming around there, so some new merch from the baseball team right there. 40% off, up to 40% off there with code Patriot at Fanatics. A lot of good stuff there. Sharing it out there. You can get the links, the direct links to those items if you follow me on Twitter. At GatorDave_SEC. Nice looking visor there. Nice looking hat there. The kickoff baseball season. New unique shirt right there. I mean, look, that's about $17 right there with code Patriot right there at Fanatics. Pretty good, unique looking shirt. Pretty cool looking hat right there. Gator country right there inside the state of Florida. I thought that was a pretty good look right there. Then, of course, the baseball word mark, the kind of cursive word mark there, the script, Florida, that's been pretty popular. So that one right there now on sale as well, about $25. So hey, go to Fanatics right there, get you hook yourself up with some good deals, and hey, you can support Gators Breakdown along the way. So all right, let's get right here. Deron Wilson being hired by the Gators. He recently accepted the defensive coordinator job at Georgia State. So he was set to be the defensive coordinator at Georgia State, and now going to accept the position as cornerbacks coach here at Florida. So he did serve as the defensive back coach at Arkansas in the 2023 and 2024 season. So 2022 season here at Florida, Billy Napier's first staff, and then goes inside the SEC and a DB coach at Arkansas in seasons 23 and 24. From New Orleans, as I said, worked at Florida as a quality control coach specializing in the cornerbacks in Napier's first season. So if the move was going to be made as fast as it was almost assuredly going to be someone Napier had familiarity with. Wilson's name, of course, was on the hot boards that came out after Harris left, and was about the only concrete name that was out there I was hearing besides Doug Belk, whose name was floating around over the weekend. I got it sent to me on Saturday that his name was being thrown out there. It's about the only two names that, like I said, were kind of out there to replace Will Harris here. Certainly not the splashiest of hires here, but the splashiest hire has not really been the MO under Napier, besides that first staff with Corey Raymond and Sean Spencer, Jay Bateman in some way, in some fashion coming from North Carolina, but still kind of had Patrick Toney coming from Louisiana, brought some Jawar Jalute, a lot of guys coming with him from Louisiana, but the splashiest name, of course, was Corey Raymond, and that was being made in Billy Napier's first coaching staff. So big question here for Deron Wilson. Certainly got to prove it on the recruiting trail. Only had one quality control, year here at Florida, so not a lot to point to as far as recruiting goes. And looking at the high school ranks, transfer portal, of course, changes, and we'll see that. Just don't know. Not going to make an ultimate determination of, look, like I said, it's not the splashiest of hire. We don't know how that's going to turn out. I'm not going to pretend to know. Look, I tend to look at hires more glass half full anyway, because we really don't know how it's going to turn out. I think, after a bumpy start for both Will Harris and Gerald Chapman, both of their position groups not starting off the best in the 2024 season. We all remember Florida not being able to get a pass rush, not being able to stop any kind of passing game the beginning parts of 2024. But then by the end of the season, a pass rush was there and some better defensive back play was there. So it may even take some time with Deron Wilson coming in here. But at least you still, with Ron Roberts hanging around as a defensive coordinator, still have something to fall back on, rely on. And we'll get into it, because there's a lot of new faces on this defensive staff. Let's get into Deron Wilson a little bit more. The Arkansas secondary, let's take a look at that. That's where he left Florida to go to. And that was an elevation for him. So certainly moving inside of the conference from a quality control coach at Florida to Arkansas hiring him as a secondary coach. And when he was there, they arguably, that was the most improved unit on the team in his first season there at Arkansas in 2023. The Razorbacks ranked 4th in the SEC in passing yards allowed per game with 202.8 yards. That's the program's best effort since 2011, when they allowed 195.2 yards per game. Arkansas's 12 interceptions that year ranked 3rd in the league, and the team's 4 pick sixes matched 5 other teams to lead all of FBS there for Arkansas. So this past season, though, the 2024 season wasn't so kind. It wasn't able to keep that level of play up. The Razorbacks were last in the SEC in 246.9 passing yards allowed per game. They lost cornerback Jalen Braxton early in the season due to injury. He was one of their best players in the secondary. He was all SEC in 2023, was not able to play much in 2024. They did have a veteran safety group at Arkansas, but they were also relying on transfers in the secondary. This lets you know. Remember, Arkansas needed help in the secondary. We know it wasn't working out here. That's where former Gator Miguel Mitchell ended up this past season. And former Georgia cornerback from Jacksonville, Jaheim Singletary, Florida was in recruiting battle for him for Georgia. He was at Arkansas as well this past year. So they relied on some transfers as well. Those are the 2 noteworthy transfers that they brought in this past season. Just thought I'd throw that note out there. But, it kind of lets you know maybe where Arkansas's safety play was when Miguel Mitchell wasn't really impactful here at Florida, giving up a ton of big plays here at Florida. He goes to Arkansas. Okay, we know the type of player they were getting there. But that, like I said, the replication from the season before, it never really come around for Arkansas. So one really, really good season, one season that they weren't able to replicate that, but he gets a defensive coordinator job at Georgia State anyway. So prior to his first stint at Florida in 2022, Wilson spent 2 seasons as the defensive coordinator at McNeese, so some defensive coordinator experience before he came to Florida. I guess coming to Florida to get in the SEC, to get to some bigger program experience. Had a more quote unquote illustrious title at McNeese as a defensive coordinator in 2021, then comes to Florida in 2022. He was named the Cowboys' interim defensive coordinator a week prior to the spring season opener against Tarleton State. Remember, 2020 is weird, so some teams played in different parts of the season. McNeese was one of those. The Pokes played 7 games in the spring of 2021 following the canceled 2020 season due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Wilson's secondary improved during the spring season, allowing 35 fewer yards passing compared to 2019. The defense improved even more during the Cowboys' fall 2021 season, giving up fewer points per game, rushing yards per game, passing yards per game, and points per game. Additionally, in 2021, he coached McNeese State to the number 1 ranked defense in the Southland Conference. The Cowboys led the conference in total defense, scoring defense, rushing defense, sacks, and 4th down defense, while ranking 2nd in 3rd down defense. Wilson also helped McNeese sit nationally in FCS in sacks, rushing defense, and scoring defense. So they ranked 10th in sacks in FCS, 16th in rushing defense, and 41st in scoring defense there at McNeese. So that was his first stint as a defensive coordinator. Was about to be his second stint as a defensive coordinator at Georgia State before he takes this Florida job. Wilson also coached at UTSA for 4 seasons, spending the final 2 as the Roadrunners cornerbacks coach after starting as a graduate assistant. In Wilson's first season leading the unit, the Roadrunners cornerbacks added to the team's 19 turnovers, with 7 of the team's 9 interceptions. So Cassius Grady matched UTSA's single-season record with 4 interceptions and finished with 45 tackles. Clayton Johnson picked off a pair of passes despite missing the final 5 games, while Tedrick McGee added 1 interception despite playing in just 6 games and helped lead UTSA to a top 10 ranked defense in the country in 2017. So been a part of some defenses that put up some pretty good stats. He was a standout cornerback at Southern Miss as a player, was Wilson, from 2010 to 2012, and a Jim Thorpe Award preseason watch list honoree before an ankle injury sidelined him for his senior season in 2013. So the Gators, of course, getting someone with some defensive coordinator experience from his time at McNeese and was just about to be hired, or was just hired as DC at Georgia State. And very similar in that regard to Will Harris being the DC at Georgia Southern. But Harris did coach at that level in 2022 with Georgia Southern, with Wilson deciding to leave Georgia State before he comes to Florida. Does have SEC experience the last couple of seasons at Arkansas, so it's not really a jump of competition from his role the last couple of seasons with the Hogs. I think when you look at it and him coming in, it's going to be interesting this spring. Of course, that's another reason I think the hire being made pretty fast. He probably still had a little bit more of a timeline, but you kind of expected this to be remedied, this opening after Will Harris leaves. You expect it to be remedied pretty fast. And if it was going to be, as I said, it's going to be somebody Billy Napier had familiarity with. This spring's going to be interesting, though, as Wilson's going to head up a group dealing with injury recovery heading into the spring. And we've talked about this, but with him being hired as cornerbacks coaches, it's worth diving back into one more time. Dejon Johnson, Devin Moore, both underwent procedures this offseason to repair torn labrums. So we have to wait and see how available they are for spring. And that's just starting here in 3 weeks, 2-3 weeks. Jameer Grimsley had ACL revision surgery. So there's 3 corners right there that are dealing with injury issues. How available are they going to be for spring? Deron Wilson coming in. He's a new coach. Dealing with this. We go to nickel. Of course, Aaron Gates tore his ACL late in the season versus Ole Miss. Sharif Denson, he's also taken this offseason to correct a fracture in his foot. So there's all kind of questions abound about who and how healthy Florida would be in the secondary when spring camp opens up in March, early March. Of course, transfer Michael Caraway comes in. He'll certainly have the chance to show that he can make the jump in competition. As well, add in Cormani McClain, who needs to show he's ready for a much larger role in his second season. Teddy Foster in his second season as well. So Deron Wilson, he's going to have his hands full, in balancing the injury situation, getting Cormani McClain, Teddy Foster up to speed, working in true freshman Ben Hanks, who's an early enrollee. So Wilson may not have his full arsenal fully healthy until fall camp. So that's something to keep an eye on. So new coach coming in and might be working with some new faces as some guys. Now, those guys, many of those guys probably going to be limited somewhat in spring. Maybe some are full. Maybe some are full participants. It's probably going to be a mix: full participants, limited, and maybe some guys just sitting out altogether in spring. But that's what they're dealing with in the cornerback situation now with a new coach. So things get pretty interesting here. Billy Napier now, this is the 3rd defensive hire this offseason. Deron Wilson for the corners. And then, of course, the co-defensive coordinators, Vinny Sinceri at safety as well. Robert Bala leading the linebackers. Bo Sunseri and Bala come fresh off of Washington staff. But if you look at it, not a lot of experience. Wilson, Sunseri, Bala, you're just looking at 5 years of Power 4 coaching experience. Not a lot of time in the big leagues. Is that going to be a hurdle? Are they ready for the jump? Questions that when you're looking at 3 guys in that same situation with not a lot of Power 4 experience, as I said, now they're coming off of it. Both, as I said, Sunseri, Bala coming from Washington, Wilson coming from Arkansas. So they're coming from it. They're coming straight from it. Guess you could say the arrow is pointing up. Well, offense, of course, remains unchanged, but it's the defense, it's that coaching carousel on that side it keeps spinning in Gainesville. I mean, last 2 years, Napier, 6 new defensive coaches. We've seen 3, since Napier's been here, 3 different defensive coordinators, Patrick Toney, then Austin Armstrong, now Ron Roberts coming in last year. I mean, it's the first time since Billy Napier's been here, it's going to be the same man heading up the defense. So with those young guys coming in, that's no better time for that. At least you don't have a new overarching voice again on defense. It's going to be Ron Roberts and a bunch of, thankfully, Gerald Chapman, he proved himself. So you got him back up front. But behind him, linebackers, safeties, corners, some new faces. Now, what can help those guys, of course, is that defensive front playing like we saw it at the tail end of last season. You get good defensive front play, it's going to make those young guys, those young coaches, it'll make them look better. Now, I'm not saying they won't deserve any credit. Of course they will, if their group plays well too. But it's going to make their jobs easier. And then last year, you go to the shakeup last year, we saw Corey Raymond, Sean Spencer, Jay Bateman, all replaced. I mean, if you think about it, and though we've said this before because it's the same case as last year, at this point, Mike Peterson, he's the only man on defense from the original defensive staff. It's been a complete overhaul on that side of the ball. And somewhat warranted after what we saw in year 1 and year 2. And the start of year 3 didn't look like it was getting any better. So you can see why the changes made sense after 2 years. After 1 season, you see what's happening and you don't completely change everything, but defense didn't get much better in year 2. Changes needed to be made. Sean Spencer was gone. Corey Raymond was gone. Jay Bateman was gone. Brought in some new guys. It took a while, but defense found their footing. Hopefully, another group of changes doesn't halt the progress that we saw at the end of the season. Like I said, probably a big check mark that you do have Ron Roberts coming back and leading that side and not another overarching voice that's different. All right. Good stuff. Let's get into some comments here before. Like I said, this is going to be a shorter episode. Chad says, downgrade. Well, I remember hearing that about Will Harris last year. We will see. We will see. Are we just broke or do coaches just not want to come here? Look at Wilson's recruiting history. I haven't had a chance to look at the recruiting history yet. I wanted to come live here with an episode. I don't think Broke's being part of it. And look, Napier's going to just do it his way. I mean, he likes familiarity in some regards. And I think, Florida wanted to move really fast on this one. I know there's kind of been a joke here that this might take a while just because some of the other hires just take a while. This one didn't need to be. Deb Gator hopping in, needed to be. Happy to see it. I'm assuming about the speed of the process here. Yeah, I mean, I do like the speed of the hire here. Maybe we can move on with it. But a lot of feelings here that this is a downgrade. Andel says Deron feels like a downgrade, unfortunately. I'm going to say Louis. maybe Lewis, but we'll see. Everyone hates Harris 6 games into the season. Now they say we are done without him. That's what I'm saying. I mean, most hires, and maybe me personally, I'm going to look at it a little more glass half full. I really don't know. And I don't think many out there really know either. I mean, you can give your opinion. If you think it's a downgrade, fine. If you think it's an upgrade, fine. I don't think we really know. Freedom Fun Adventure says, good evening, all. Hopefully this is an upgrade, or at least the same in coaching and recruiting. Was Harris forced out? Seems UF has too many unforced errors since Mack, Mullen, Napier. Yeah, look, if you go to the comments Will Harris put out, certainly kind of sounded like maybe there's just some not being on the same page there with maybe Billy Napier, Ron Roberts, Will Harris. We talked about it last episode. You can go back and learn no sense in repeating a lot of what was said in the last episode. I mean, we know it's been out there, just did not seem to get along. Move was made. Chase Campbell says, good hire, Dave. Has coordinator experience. Has past success of improving in secondary pretty fast. Recruited the 137th ranked player in the country to Arkansas, so has some recruiting background. Yeah, it would have been interesting to see, because if you go to his first year, and had Florida, went to Arkansas in his first year. And like I said, did have cornerback Jalen Braxton as a true freshman playing really well, and then he gets hurt. Wasn't able to play his second season 2024. So also was able to see bringing a true freshman in, elevating them to an all-SEC freshman season in his first year as a cornerbacks coach at Arkansas. So, yeah, if you want to point, look, I think it's a good hire. That doesn't mean it's outstanding. It doesn't mean I'm sitting here saying DBU. Doesn't mean he's vintage Corey Raymond. I mean, yeah, that's going to be hard to match for anybody. I mean, can he put this cornerback group at a level? As I said, they if it was going to be Will Harris or not, if it was going to be somebody else, we need to see a jump in production at corner. Certainly. And you had Jason Marshall playing. Will Harris did have Jason Marshall playing at some of his best football in his career before he gets hurt. Devin Moore was playing well. Devin Moore can stay healthy. Dejon Johnson was playing pretty good toward the end of the season. The thing for Wilson is he needs to be able to pick up where this group was at the end of the season and then elevate the play. That's going to be his job. As I said, I think you're going to have some help. I think the front has the potential with Banks and Sapp coming back. Gums there at edge. Need to stay healthy there. Need to provide some depth up front as well. But I think from what we saw at the end of the season, there's some potential to be really good up front. That's going to help that secondary. Jim Martin, I think he'll coach fine. I want to see how he does as a recruiter. Winning record will help that tremendously. That's true. That's true. Florida's secondary recruiting under Will Harris, it wasn't much to write home about until Florida games. So kind of going to Jim's point here, absolutely. I mean, he'll make a name for himself if this defense does pick up where it left off toward the end of last year, and you do start producing. And it's okay, well, there you go. Florida's got a good coach in the secondary. There's never a shortage of talent in the state of Florida at the secondary spot, at the corner spot. Now you're going to have to go head-to-head with Miami staff and Will Harris for safeties, and I don't know who's coaching corners for Miami. I believe it's Harris coaching safeties at Miami, not corner. But I mean, it's going to be. Hopefully, there's a lot of wins to fall back on when you're on the recruiting trail. Don't know if there's really a whole lot to make of his recruiting right now. We're just going to have to see it. Did Jack says, keep in mind, a lot of fans didn't see Harris as a good hire initially. I think Wilson would do great. Chase Campbell, this is also by far the most talent Wilson has ever had on a team by far. Very true. Juan Manuel IV, is this an upgrade or a Walmart generic coach? I don't know. Okay, let's see. Anything? Probably the best way to put it, kind of repeating some of the things. Funny reading some of the comments. Many people did not like Harris at first. Of course, we brought that up. Look what happened. Give this guy a chance. May surprise us. Maybe that's where we go. Just give the guy a chance. As I said, I don't think we don't know. Now, we can certainly give the opinion. Upgrade, level, downgrade. I mean, I can say this. Now, I said last episode, I'm not going to go back on it. Would I have rather have Will Harris stay? Absolutely. I wish he was still the cornerbacks coach at Florida moving forward. That's just for the sake of, I didn't want change and building off of the end of last year. But we already, I don't want to speak for anybody else. I really am only pointing to what that defense showed the last 4 games of the season. And, just outside of that, what Jason Marshall was showing because he was playing some really good football before he got hurt. I'd have loved to see him in that role. But the Jason Marshall playing really well, was that really going to equal a win against Georgia? Was that really going to equal a win versus when Florida went to Texas and got splattered? No, your results probably are still the same. So I think we still go, looking at the last 4 games. That's really all this boils down to when you look at what this defense was able to do. Now, they did play better. They were playing better midpoint in the season, but I think the reason we're all excited and what we were excited what we saw from Will Harris in this group was because of that last 4 games. So that's really what we're pointing to. So, admittedly, that's not a whole lot. So I think if you were super excited about Will Harris, then I don't think you should feel too bad about this. Because really, honestly, and myself included, we're just really looking at that last 4-game window. John Dickinson says he's underwhelmed. Tim Carter, this is a great hire. Nothing flashy, but necessary at this point. Chase Campbell, Castell, Denson, Gates, Thornton, Cormani, Dijon Johnson were all recruited the year that Wilson was on staff, and Devin Moore was already there. So a lot of guys should know him. Yeah, there's going to be some familiarity for sure, just because of that 2022 year. You're absolutely right. There's going to be some familiarity. They're going to know the name. This is not going to be out of left field. King of Strong seems like he knows how to coach well. Just have to see how he can recruit, keep the corners that we just got on the roster. Yeah, there you go. Another point. And kind of going to the previous point, there probably is familiarity in name. So if we talk about transfers and all that stuff, with the current roster, maybe a move like this helps. Juan Manuel, I have to do some more research on that. I gave you some names about has Wilson coached anyone who got drafted or went to the pros. As I said, it was at Arkansas, so kind of maybe you have to look back at there the last 2 years and what was going to happen or who he was coaching. Like I said, quality was controlled. So you have to go back to, what was it, his McNeese and his UTSA days. Rigor mortis, dollar store version of Will Harris. Jim Martin, think I'll trust Napier coaching hires more than this chat thinks. Damn, just let the man do his thing. We're trending up. Okay. Chase Campbell one more time. Look, this is why I like bringing the chat. Sometimes I don't get to look at everything before I go live, and thanks you guys for chiming in. Chase Campbell, he recruited the number 137 and 17th ranked corner in the country at Arkansas in 2024, Dave. Good stuff. Thanks, Chase. Harrison Sanchez was hoping for Belk. Yep, Doug Belk, as I said, was the other name I was hearing the most, of course. Nothing new when he was a defensive coordinator at Houston before he's at USC now. Of course, his name was coming up for a possible defensive coordinator job here at Florida before. So Doug Belk's name kind of been around a little bit. Hal Henderson. All I know of this defense was not ready at the start of the season. Regardless of what coaches we have or don't, I'm coming hard after Napier. I mean, that's true. It's ultimately going to fall on Billy Napier to make the right hires here. Yeah, and this group's going to have to be ready to go better than they were beginning of the year. It's going to take a couple games. We're not going to learn a lot of Long Island. We'll learn some against South Florida. Then week 3 at LSU, week 4 at Miami. They just got to be ready. Fred, Vinny could coach the whole secondary. Smart, savvy guy. Doesn't need much help. Maybe could, but he's got more of a safety background. Wilson got more of a corner background, so completely fine with separating those two position groups. Kempo Karate, with his consistency here, admire the consistency. We know what really matters. Offensive play calling. Motion and Momentum says, shout out to Rock Boys Podcast. They called it, like the hire, bring some continuity. Would have loved to have Belk also. Like I said, I mean, yeah, I saw that they had put something out there, but at the same time, this was, I think I saw On 3 and 24/7's hot board, and he was on both of the hot boards as well. So, and last one, Chase, and I will sign it off right here after this. Problem with Belk was I believe he would want complete control of the secondary to leave USC, and Sinceri wouldn't have control of the safeties. That may have been part of it, maybe something that maybe held that up. Even if it was, if it was the case with Belk, I could see that being the case of why it would hang up with his background of being a defensive coordinator. Was pretty highly regarded as a Houston defensive coordinator, and then went to USC coaching the secondaries there under Lincoln Riley. So, but all right, Gators get their man Deron Wilson moving fast here to get that hire in place. So there we go. We'll see what more comes out here. Late episode last week, starting this week here with Deron Wilson replacing Will Harris. So see what the rest of the week holds right here on Gators Breakdown. I'm working on a big research project, just more of a time consumption thing for an episode, maybe some articles there at gatorsbreakdown.com, taking a look at returning production for Florida and their opponents. So it's good to take a little bit of time of having to go check on the opponents. When I'm doing Florida, it's really easy. Okay, yeah, I know that guy's leaving. I know that guy's coming back. For most of the opponents, I kind of know who's leaving, who's coming back, but got to make sure. So a lot of research of, did they transfer? Are they going to the NFL? Are they even on those teams' rosters anymore? So, but basically what I'm doing is I want to compare Florida's returning production to who they are playing. And I'm looking at it in a way of who played on those teams last year. I'm not counting the transfers that have experience but didn't play for that team. Didn't play for LSU last year. Didn't play for Georgia last year. Didn't play for Texas last year. Just the guys who played for those teams last year. What does the returning production look like? Because we know Florida's got a pretty good bit. So I'm kind of working on comparing for Florida and comparing against their opponents who has returning production coming back. So that just takes a little bit of time. Last one, Deshaun, thanks for chiming in. People only don't like the hire because they aren't educated on the hire. I was just in a space where respected coaches came up and spoke very highly of him. Even Crow loved it. Maybe a Cromartie there? So I don't know. But there you go. Okay. Spaces are pretty good sometimes for that. I remember, when Napier got hired, we had the guys from the Rage and Review podcast hop in on space. And I hadn't done spaces in so long. Try to keep the chats like that on the Discord for Gators Breakdown Plus members. So who knows? Maybe that might come back around, but only so much time. Only so much time. All right, that'll do it, everybody. That'll do it for this episode of Gators Breakdown. Gators hiring Deron Wilson as they replace Will Harris. And there we go. That'll do it for this episode of Gators Breakdown. I'm your host, David Waters. You can find me on social media at GatorDave_SEC. Guys and girls out there, thank you for listening and watching this episode of Gators Breakdown.